Let's get into it now. A spoiler-free movie review of A Real Pain starring Kieran, Culkin, and Jesse Eisenberg, also written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg. This is what I'm going to call a no-notes review, and it has a lot to do with this movie, which I'll get into. I don't know how emotional I'm going to get during this review, but for those watching on YouTube, I usually have this iPad right in front of me. You can't see it, but I'm usually looking down at it because I make a lot of notes about all the movie reviews I do because I want to give my most knowledgeable approach to every single movie review, even though I don't get a whole lot into like all the technical aspects and what like a real acclaimed movie critic would talk about. I want to be prepared so it doesn't seem like I just come on here and go off the fly, go off whatever, and just like spit things out. Because I like to be prepared because I think it's important for me doing this show and for you listening that I give a crap about what I'm doing. I know what I'm talking about, even though I feel a lot of my reviews come from pure emotion. I think that is how I approach movie reviews, how movies make me feel, because I know that that is my truth. What I heard one time Quentin Tarantino talking about one of his favorite movie reviewers, or his favorite movie reviewer of all time, who he asked why she never wrote a book or talked about it more. And she was like, because I give a piece of myself away in every single movie review I do. And that is what I like to do here because on the surface, this is a movie podcast where I come on here, talk about movie reviews, make fun of movies, rise up, maybe glaze some movies here and there. But I also like to give you a little bit of myself because talking about movies is talking about life. And I think if I could get through to some people who are maybe hesitant about checking out the podcast, thinking, I don't watch movies. Like, movies are dead. I don't need to do that. Just because you don't watch movies, that's like saying you don't want to experience life. Sometimes movies unearth things that I didn't know was like built up inside of me. And that is exactly what A Real Pain did. It was almost like it reminded me of when I'd be cooking out with my dad, and he never used charcoal. He would always use real wood. It would take forever to burn. It always had to add an hour to the cook time whenever we were supposed to start, but it would burn forever. And sometimes at the end of the night when we're going to put out the fire, you think it's completely out, and then you move it just a little bit, move it a little bit more, and suddenly this big roaring fire is happening all again just because you kind of picked at it a little bit. I feel like that is what this movie did to me. And the reason I have a no notes review is because I feel like when I think about these characters and what it just really struck a chord with. You have two very opposite people here. Jesse Eisenberg plays a character named David. Kieran Culkin plays a character named Benji. They are cousins. They are at this point in their like mid to late 30s where they're kind of had a falling out, and you learn more and more details about their relationship as the movie unfolds. But the movie starts with them going on a trip because their grandmother just died. They're going to Poland, and it's the first time they've seen each other in a very long time. And what I loved about the start of this movie is within 5 minutes, you know all the details about these characters that you need to know. And that was a really strong opening because it starts out with Jesse Eisenberg's character driving to the airport. He's in an Uber, and he calls his cousin like 5 times because he is so anxious and just telling him, hey, there's traffic here. If you haven't left yet, I hope you've left by now. Hey, calling you again. Don't want to leave another message. And that tells you everything you need to know about that character being very high stress, just very tightly wound, worrying about every single detail on this trip. And then you have Kieran Culkin's character who hasn't replied to any of his phone calls, hasn't listened to any of his messages, and he's just hanging out at the airport. He's like, yeah, I've been here for like a couple hours, few hours, because I like to come here and people watch. So that really tells you the complete opposite nature of both of these characters. And the more and more you learn about each of them, the more I realize how much I am like Jesse Eisenberg's character. And I have to say, it didn't make me feel that good because that's something I've been struggling with recently because being so anxious and worried about just the little parts of life and having things in order, worrying about your job. In this movie, he is married, also has a very young son, so not at that phase of my life yet. But all of the characteristics of Jesse Eisenberg, I saw myself in. And all the characteristics of Benji, played by Kieran Culkin, I saw what I've been trying to achieve my entire adult life. And there's some moments in this movie where they butt heads so much because they're so different. And you could say they're like an odd couple, but I feel like that's such an old reference to an old movie of like one's really clean and one's really messy. How will they get together? It's not really like that. It's more that Jesse Eisenberg has changed over the course of his life to be more adult because he is in his mid to late 30s. And Kieran Culkin is very much just still carefree and has a much different approach to life, doesn't give a crap about anything. And that is something that I have strived to be a little bit more. I would love to be more carefree. And not just because I feel like I would have less stress. I think I would always carry the stress with me because that is something I've had since a very young age. But I think there are moments in this movie that I thought, I want to be more charismatic and be able to light a room up when I walk into it. And I feel that that is something that I've just tried to do, but because over the course of my life, I've always been known as the quiet guy, which I hate. I mean, I come on here and I talk 45 minutes to an hour a week about movies, and I could do that every single day, and I would still be the quiet guy. And there was something about this movie bringing out Benji's character of him being able to connect with people. That is something I've been just trying to do my entire life of, if I ever go hang out with a new group of people, oh, I feel very tense. That is hard for me to make new friends in a small group. Big groups, I go on stage and tell jokes. That's no problem to me. I ain't connecting that way because to me, that doesn't feel real. You give me 500 people, 1,000 people, it doesn't matter. I've done that before. That is easy to me. But connecting with just a small group of people, I can't do it. And if I went to hang out with people like for a weekend and like, hey, here's Mike, and you hang out for the entire weekend, I don't feel like I would bond with those people. And I feel that that is something I've tried to do because I have met people that I enjoy after just an hour of meeting with them and I want to be around them more. I want to know what they have thoughts about. And there are people I like so instantly that I always wish that I could be that type of person. Some of my friends are those type of people who can just talk to anybody, strike up a conversation, and get all these details out of people because they are so warm and friendly and inviting. And there's a moment in this movie where Kieran Culkin learns something about the other members of this tour group that they go on because they go on this trip to Poland, but they are joining this tour guide who has like a very interesting cast of people with him. And you have Kieran Culkin's character who is learning all these things about other people because he's genuinely curious. He likes talking to people, and they all start to like him. Some of them don't like him for that same reason, but some of them form like a really strong relationship with him just because he has that warm nature, that charismatic nature, who he is somebody who just comes into a room, says what he says, and people connect with that. And I've always wanted to do that because I feel over the course of my life that sometimes I feel that people just don't like me. Not just that they don't like me, it's that I don't do enough things for people to have an opinion on me, where I don't say a whole lot, I don't put a lot out there. So it's not that people don't like me because they're like, oh, I don't like that guy. It's just because I feel that I kind of blend into the background sometimes, that people don't like me, but they also don't, like, they don't hate me. And I think that's almost worse. That is something I've just been fighting because, like I said, going back to that example, if you met people, spend a weekend with them, I feel like I'm so forgettable for that reason. And I think people genuinely think I'm a nice person, I'm a nice guy, but there's just something about not being able to connect with people in that way that I've just been striving to do my entire adult life. Maybe even since I was a teenager. Like, I didn't have friends then, but I feel like even growing up now, like, I just want to have that. And there are moments in this movie where it really was like, did they make this movie just for me? Jesse Eisenberg, did you like hack into my computer and find all my journals and all my notes and listen to this podcast of all these things I've struggled with? And I haven't watched a movie that just nailed that aspect of my life because this is probably something I should talk about in therapy. But it just really struck a chord with me and unearthed something in me that I really felt some type of way after watching this movie, thinking more and more about just this year I've been struggling with this and thinking this. And to see it play out in this way and to see it that it is something that other people struggle with was really something, I don't even want to say refreshing, but just something I needed to know, that there are other people out there who are like this. Like all my entire life, I've been a David and I've just been trying to be a Benji. And then getting back to the movie a little bit, I think the reason this message came across so well is because they are both fantastic actors. Jesse Eisenberg, I feel, has been a little bit typecast. I feel like he's gotten away from it now, but Mark Zuckerberg, that he played him in the social network, and that was like his role. When I think of Mark Zuckerberg, I think of Jesse Eisenberg. And then from there, I also think of him in Zombieland, where he's kind of the same person a little bit, or in Adventureland. And throughout the course of his movies, he is that kind of nervous energy person, a very fast talker. I don't even know how you teach that or how you learn that or how to take a character on like that. Like, I don't know if Brad Pitt could play somebody like that. That's just not in his arsenal. But this is the role that was just perfectly Jesse Eisenberg. And then you have Kieran Culkin, who is a fantastic actor. You probably know him most as Macaulay Culkin's brother, or if you watch Succession, which I never watched that show. But he's a really great actor, and I feel he's having success in his later part of his 30s and 40s now. And you can tell just how much every role he does now that he really kind of absorbs. And I've heard stories of him being really great at learning dialogue. Like he would go onto the set of Succession and they would completely change all the lines on him like day of. And they're like, oh, we changed all your lines, so you're going to have to relearn these real quick. He would sit down in the makeup chair, and by the end of his makeup session, he would already have them figured out. So there's something in his brain that he can absorb lines and memorize them really well and then completely nail the emotion, because he has so much emotion throughout this entire movie, where he goes on the highest of highs, where he's just wanting to have fun and doing things out of pocket and making funny jokes that aren't really jokes. So if you're into dark comedies, you'll very much be into his humor. You see more examples of how different they are. There's one scene in particular where Benji wants to take kind of funny pictures at a serious monument, and Jesse Eisenberg's character like, nah, we shouldn't do that. That feels disrespectful. But he starts doing it anyway. Jesse Eisenberg's taking the pictures, but then everybody else in the tour group joins in, and it's a big fun moment. And then Jesse Eisenberg's character is just there taking the pictures, never gets in on the fun. So you see more of that throughout the movie. And I think it's Kieran Culkin's ability to do drama really well, but also to have like this really good comedic timing that I think he is going to get a nomination for Best Supporting Actor in this movie. I feel like this movie is also a shoe-in to get a Best Picture nomination, because it feels very novel to me. I haven't really seen a movie like this where there's not some grand plot. Like what I told you earlier, that's the entire movie. They go on this trip, they have all these connections, there is a lot of dialogue, but the dialogue is really important, and you have two people who are just really great at having this chemistry that, even though they're cousins, they kind of feel like brothers. So maybe a little bit too, I saw a bit of my brother and myself in this, because that's kind of our personalities a little bit. Like I'm one way. I would say very much my brother is more of like a Kieran Culkin in this movie. So maybe I saw some parallels there too. Like even the trip itself, because there are some really heavy moments where they go to concentration camps, and it takes this other emotional level that I wasn't really expecting it to go on. So as you're feeling bad for both of these characters, you also feel bad for the world. And I haven't seen a movie have this course of action from beginning to end, and also only be an hour and 22 minutes. Like before you think twice about this movie, it is over. So for A Real Pain, I give it 4.5 out of 5. I would say that point 5 is more of the emotional impact it had on me. So for any other person who doesn't struggle with that, it's probably still a 4 out of 5. A really great movie, though. Definitely check it out if you want to get in early on some of the movies that are going to be nominated for Best Picture.